Got nothing to say. I don't even know what to say, to be honest. I'm devastated. It's not a hey. It's not a football thing. It's a
Woo.
whatever thing. Scott, how are you?
Mate, I'm totally foursome. I mean, it was an unforgettable match, and I didn't want to force you to come on and do this stream, but it's for the best. It's for the best. You forgive and forget, right?
Yeah, well, speaking of forgetting, it was a very forgetful performance, and I was actually going to forfeit my appearance for this particular stream, but I'm a man of my word. I'm not saying that some of us in the podcast don't turn up when their teams don't win, but some of us definitely do. Now, look, in all seriousness, great to be back on here. It's always nice to watch the football at a friendly time of the day.
Yeah.
And down here in Sydney, it's 12:15 p.m. It's a bit unfriendly for those in the UK and some other parts of the world, but thanks for those who've braved it out to be here because look, to be honest, for a friendly slash unfriendly game, there was a lot to go through. There was a lot of positives from an Arsenal point of view, a lot of disappointment from a Chelsea perspective, and just great to have a few people on here. And Scott, let's get into it.
Yeah, look, I mean, it feels odd to be streaming with the sun shining through my window. It's not normally quite late at night, but if you are new to this channel, please make sure you hit that subscribe button, chuck a like on the video. We do 2 live shows a week. So, Justin asking a big question. G'day, lads. Who won? It's not RJ, mate. I don't know what he's doing with the Sunnies. It makes
Mate,
no
I just
sense to
can't
me.
bear to look at you. I can't bear to look at you straight. I'm hiding the tears behind these sunnies, Justin. Unfortunately, I'm
Something shady
devastated, my
going
friend.
on. Arsenal were the victors if you've been living under a rock. 4-0. 4-0, comprehensive, the kind of result that you like to see in your preseason. But we're going to go through a few things today. I was about to say tonight. We're going to go through the lineups. We're going to go through the first and the second half because I do feel like there were serious differences between the two halves. So we're going to talk about both of them, talk about some of the standouts, some of the players that maybe stood out for the wrong reasons, and then talk about what this means for both of the respective clubs. Welcome, Saucy. Dan's going to be ecstatic. Well, I don't know if Dan's a Chelsea or an Arsenal fan, but if he's an Arsenal fan, he is going to be ecstatic. Tom here, good afternoon. Afternoon, Tom. Nice to see you.
G'day,
and the
Tom.
concierge. Mate, don't be salty. Let's just have a bit of honor. Let's accept
The Mickey
the
Mouse Cup.
Take that L. And Chelsea database raising a really good point. Arsenal looking ready for the season, Chelsea not. We're going to talk about that too. But let's begin, RJ, just by sharing those lineups. I want to know, and we watched this game together, spoiler alert, but I want to know your thoughts on the starting lineup for Chelsea.
Yeah, and as we were saying off air, it was a bit of a different setup, not just from a personnel point of view, but structurally speaking, with the 4-3-3 style of play, which I was saying to you as well, that it's something that as Blues fans, we've been largely commenting for the trial of this because we feel that from a goal scoring point of view, we have been a bit shallow and lacking. So we thought this will get more from our midfield to have that extra presence up at a higher area of the pitch. But as it turned out, structurally speaking, it didn't seem to gel. And with the particular players, I've got to say I was quite happy with the defense. I was happy to see Thiago Silva leading. I was happy to see Trevor Chalobah continue to get more minutes as part of his development. Emerson, I'm a little bit on the fence because we've seen what he can do, but ultimately he was loaned out last season because he wasn't seen to be a prominent player under Tuchel's system. So is this one of those situations where we're playing him in order just to preserve the minutes for other known starters, or is it a genuine tilt? I'm not too sure. Gallagher, Jorginho, Mount midfield, interesting proposition on paper, but I think the balance wasn't quite right there. I know a lot of people gave Gallagher a little bit of stick at times because he gave away a few fouls and he turned over the ball. The first one he got found out from a Chalobah pass. But I thought he also made some good defensive contributions and was quite energetic. I'm just not sure with Conagher if that's his best position. So more on that. But then again, up front, Sterling, Havertz and Werner. You know my thoughts on Werner. I think he's very rocks and diamonds, probably more so the former. And Havertz, again, not an out-and-out striker. There was a lot of fluidity there, But I feel that the forwards weren't really able to get themselves involved just because of the intensity and how high up the pitch Arsenal's press was. Yeah, you're on mute at the moment, Scott, but I'm sure you're giving me some stick.
Mate, this is the problem when you stream during the day. 3-year-olds are awake. So I'm waiting for that door to bust open any second. But one of the things that's come through in the chat from both Chelsea Database and Dylan, who's saying he was surprised at how bad Chelsea looked, even though it's pre-season. I look at that lineup, RJ, and I see a lot of players who I'd expect to be in your starting lineup on the opening day of the season. How many of those guys do you think won't be in that starting lineup? I would say what? Emerson won't be there, but the rest of them look like nailed on starters.
No, I'd challenge that. I'd say Emerson, Conor Gallagher's probably a touch and go. I'd say Werner as well. I wouldn't say he's a starter. I think he'd be close. And also, to be honest with you, even though Chalobah's been playing well, I'd say he wouldn't be starting. So I'd be saying Silva, Koulibaly, who we'll touch on. He came on. He played quite well when he did come on. And there's just a question mark, depending on the system, if Trev starts or do they have someone like Reece James make up that third man in the defense. So, even Havertz, it's not a guarantee that he'll start, to be honest. I think the most worrying sign is, based on these preseason fixtures, you just don't have a clear sense of our identity. And the transfer window's really disrupted that, mate. So, yeah.
Yeah. And look, again, I'm prepared that there may be an imposter into the stream. I can hear little voices near my door. But I want to quickly look at the Arsenal lineup. And, mate, you got to take them shades off. You look absolutely dodgy. You remind me of Joe Biden. To be fair, you've got Joe Biden.
They're not coming off, mate. They are not coming off. Just like Chelsea never turned up, these aren't coming off, mate.
When I looked at Arsenal's lineup, I wasn't shocked that it was a strong lineup because we have been playing relatively strong lineups this preseason. Arteta seems to really be wanting to make the most of preseason, not treating it just as a fitness-raising exercise, but wanting to get some combinations going. Now, it was a shock, of course, to see Zinchenko starting. He has been around the team for about a week, but the signing only became official the other day. So to see him starting was good. I thought he had a really solid match. Jesus up there didn't shock me. And it was pretty much what I expected. Seeing White, Saliba, and Gabriel all playing at the same time, not too bad as well. White was pushed out on the right-hand side. So we know he has that in his locker to play there. So if that's what happens, then so be it. We know we can't rely on Tomiyasu and Tierney to get through a full season. They unfortunately, two really good players, but so injury prone. And, it was good. Zinchenko kind of roamed. I can see Shane asking, did Zinchenko play left back or midfield?
Pretty high up the pitch, wasn't he?
He was more on the left, but was moving into that midfield space. He's seen the way the game played out, and we'll talk about this. We can start talking about this now. Arsenal were pressing Chelsea very high up the pitch. I was very impressed with the way we came out of the gates and we were pushing and pressing and putting pressure on your guys very high up. Were you shocked by that press from Arsenal, RJ, or was it what you expected?
Yeah, that's a good question. As we said, we were very impressed with just the high risk, high reward factor that Arsenal were playing. And I actually kind of think it's just as a function of players and an understanding of what the manager wants. And I felt because it's a relatively risk-free environment, it's something that they can sort of take it to a team that's meant to be one of the better teams that they're coming up against. I think part of that as well was the confidence that they could go up there and trust their defense to clean up any mess, because there were a few occasions in which we did successfully navigate out of the press. But unfortunately, for a few occasions where we did that, we just squandered those opportunities when we did find some space. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not we see that consistently with Arsenal, or were they just trying that because it's a relatively risk-free environment. But you got to give them credit, man. They looked hungry from the outset. The first goal that they scored, I thought Trevor Chalobah did a great job in mopping up the mess, but then he played a pass this comes back to the misunderstanding of players not playing in familiar positions. Conago was found out. It was a great first-time pass to Gabriel Jesus, who successfully dinked it over Mendy, who cut off the angle. So, hey, the fine margins, man.
Mate, and you know what? I have to say, just on that Arsenal press, because a lot of our best results under Mikel Arteta have been in matches where we've come out from the first minute and pressed with high intensity. That, for me, is the formula for Arsenal to be winning matches. The problem is we do that when we come up against some of the big boys. I saw us do it against Chelsea and United at the end of last season with great success, and I'm seeing it again this morning. But when we play those little teams, we tend to play a completely different way, and that's where we drop points. So that press, I think, is going to be vital going into this new season because, like you said, Chalobah brilliantly dribbled through about 3 of our players under high pressure, but because of the lack of pace in the center of your midfield, he wasn't given a safe or easy distribution route. So he ended up turning the ball over, beautiful through ball, and Gabriel Jesus showing what he's got in his locker, a beautiful, cool, calm, collected finish. I want to talk about another guy in the Arsenal lineup, Ødegaard, someone who I've been critical of in the past. I felt we were asking too much of him too soon. I didn't think he was ready to be that man, but he was quite good this morning, wearing the captain's armband. Came out, was just very cool and calm, good work rate, was an active part of that press. And I thought he put Chelsea under all sorts of pressure. We know he's got that final through ball in his locker, so very excited to see him this season. Who stood out for you in the first half, RJ?
Yeah, and I'll go for both teams. And I know we compliment the nice finishes from Jesus and the second goal from Ødegaard, of course, which we were saying at the time. The way I'd summarize it was the vision, the movement, the touch, and the finish. It was all very incisive and decisive. I thought they'd done very well. That second goal in particular was a really well-worked goal, but it was a bit of staticness from us as well that didn't track the movement. So Tuchel will no doubt pick up on that because, again, if not anything else, it was a terribly, terrible display. But the safeguard is we'd rather this happen now than during the season. Putting that to the side, it was an awful performance. But what stood out in the first half, I thought the unison of Arsenal's press. It wasn't one or two players. Like you said, Chalobah, Jorginho, they worked themselves out nicely from the back at times. But then the midfield got caved in on, and we often turned the ball over quite cheaply. And I thought the way you guys switched the ball from left to right, they did a really good job in stretching us and creating those overloads. For us, what I would say, what stood out for me was just how, like I said, disjointed was the word. We were losing a lot of the 50-50 battles, and we were just, I felt, we never came out of the blocks.
Yep.
And I know that's a general comment to make, but I felt we weren't able to get a foothold and gain the rhythm that we normally would have because we normally are a team that's very possession heavy, but lack that creativity and incisiveness in the final third. But this time, in the first half in particular, we were under the pump that much. We just never really got a chance to really find our feet and rhythm. And as a result, we were shell-shocked. And
I think that lack of pace, RJ, your lack of pace
I'm not sure if it's pace. I'm not sure if it's pace in the middle because Conor Gallagher and Mason Mount have pace and have dynamism. But I think it's the fact that Arsenal were that tight to us. They didn't give us a chance to turn and take our time to build up the play. So, yeah, we're just shell-shocked, mate.
I just want to point out, our man Borche in here from the football capital. It's only pre-season, mate. You know what? As a Manchester United fan, I'm going to say to you, you worry about holding 2-0 leads against Aston Villa and not having ex-Gooners steal your glory at the end, mate. It's only pre-season, but for me, looking at pre-season, I know that the gaffer's taking it seriously. I can see that from our lineups, and I can already see that he's got a clear idea of how he wants us to play, what the system's going to be, and I'm seeing that translate to the players. So as far as the signs I've seen, pre-season or not, they're positive signs, mate. And as an Arsenal fan, I'm going to take any positive vibes that I can latch onto. RJ, obviously the result, not the kind of result Chelsea fans would have been hoping for. 4-0, quite comprehensive, quite embarrassing because it wasn't a friendly. Neither of those teams were treating it like a friendly. There were tackles flying in. The ref seemed allergic to his yellow cards in the first half, just letting it run. And it was just really intense. The intensity didn't shock me because I know that our clubs don't like each other. The players don't like each other. So I was actually quite happy to see him going in hard and getting stuck in. Gabriel Jesus came off with a little niggle. Seemed to be a hamstring thing. I'm not too worried about that. But I'm sure we'll hear some more from Mikel Arteta in his post-match press conference. Did the intensity shock you, RJ? Because Chelsea were getting stuck in as well, man. They were very physical.
Not physical, but I think it was physical because we weren't as intense. Let me explain. Arsenal started off the brighter, the sharper, looked like a team that has utilised their preseason more effectively because they've got more stability and they've had a couple of new signings, but those new signings have seemed to slot in fairly seamlessly. Yep. Whereas for us, there's a lot of question marks in terms of players, question marks in terms of style and combinations. And it was obvious to see because we were very all over the place. And because of that, it looked physical. That's because we were off the pace. We were second best in challenges. We weren't able to counter the opportunities when we did get on one-on-ones. And we just looked like a team that's got a lot more questions than answers at the moment. And if I'm Thomas Tuchel, I'm not too sure what I gained from it. I know we'll go on to that later, but just in terms of the players themselves, I just felt I was quite disappointed in some of the lack of sharpness in terms of even their confidence at times, because some of those things there were effort-based and concentration rather than good tactics. And those are the things there, if I'm Thomas Tuchel, I'd be concerned about because it's so early in the season. You're looking for players to try to impress. And some of those displays I saw, mate, very unimpressive.
Can I tell you that if you search Tuchel out on Twitter, there is an abundance of traffic. I don't know if it's trending yet.
That's nonsense, mate. That is nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, look, let's use the wise words of Borcha. He doesn't have many wise words, but this is one of them. It's only preseason. For those people saying Tuchel out or, wanting pressure on the gaffer already, I think that's ridiculous. And that's coming from an Arsenal fan. But of course, I'm happy with you guys right now because we just spanked you 4-0. So we'll take that. Couple of questions around top four have come in. Here we go. I know it's still very early, but can Arsenal beat Chelsea to top four? RJ, give me your thoughts on that.
Of course they can. Well, let's just put things into perspective here. We say preseason. Why do we say it's only preseason? Because it's not a fair and accurate reflection of the reality. It's a reflection of where teams are currently at and also how teams probably perceive the importance of these. I think we're in different circumstances. We're still trying to find solutions about how we want to play and who we want them to play. I think we're treating preseason differently. And as a result, we can see just how far off the pace we are against a team like Arsenal who feel like they're more settled and look like they're just trying to get a rhythm going so to go into the season all guns blazing. But Arsenal top four, of course. Why wouldn't they? Wow. Arsenal is a very good team with a manager that's been there for a while now. And let's not get it twisted. This team has spent a lot of money upgrading its players. This isn't, with all due respect, an Everton or a Leeds or another team that's on a very different circumstance. So absolutely, Chelsea need to look over their shoulders for not just Arsenal, Tottenham. There's a few teams. So, yeah, Arsenal, if they can play to their potential, not get key injuries, they're right in that top four race and some.
Obviously, a couple of other highlights. I know there would be some fans who may be tuning into this stream that didn't get to watch the game. Great question here. Are the glasses to cover your tears?
Absolutely.
You better believe they're covering the tears.
I'm devastated.
I watched the game with this fella, and he did very well to keep himself cool, calm, and composed. But he knew what he was in for here. He knew. Odegaard, just to unpack a couple of the key moments from an Arsenal perspective, a beautiful, quick, tidy finish into the bottom corner of Chelsea's goal. I was impressed with how he hit that because his finishing hasn't always been his best asset. He's not one of those attacking mids who bangs in the goals, but he got one opportunity this morning and he banged that into the bottom corner. Mendy couldn't do much with that. The third goal from Bukayo Saka, you had to feel for Mendy here. He made 2 or 3 top-class saves. Maybe could have parried it a little bit more to the side, but in the heat of the moment, you know, he saved the shot at the end of the day. But Bukayo Saka, who was marginally offside, and I'll put my hands up and say that, was standing in the right place at the right time to tuck that away. So that was the third Arsenal goal. And then the fourth, where once we put on those substitutes towards the end of the game to rest some of the starters, you had 2 of those subs link up beautifully with Cedric sending a pinpoint cross to an unmarked and open Sambi Lokonga, who was able to just put it into the back of the net and wrap it up at 4-0. So some really good goals, some good attacking play. Before we get RJ's thoughts on those, however, going to ask you, if you are new to It's a Football Thing, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you chuck a like on the video as well. You're more than welcome to share your views. The link to the stream is there. We're not going to go too long, but if you want to jump in, always welcome, or chuck it in the comments, just like Xavier has here. Arteta emphasising a serious high press is key this season. Well said, Xavier. He seems to be one of the few coaches that knows we'll have 5 subs. Well, we've talked about that in our regular shows. This 5 subs, I think, is going to really make a big difference this season, and it places a lot of importance on the bench and the players that you've got to come on. RJ, I just went through some of the key moments at Arsenal, the 4 goals. There wasn't much more that was key than that. Did you have any moments that you wanted to quickly reflect on?
Yeah, sure. So obviously the goals were a couple of things, but even at it was 2-0, there was a couple of chances where Reece James, who wasn't able to really get as high up the pitch as he'd like because he was playing more in that right back spot for a long period of time, put in a couple of dangerous crosses, and Havertz got his head onto one of them, but it was expertly blocked. And I thought, if that header doesn't get blocked, that's a goal. Then Mason Mount on the stroke of half time, pile driver, hits the post, goes on the other side of the goal frame. If, again, little moments make a difference. And then, again, at the start of the second half, I felt for all of the poor showings in the first half, we actually started off quite well in the second stanza. We were finding more space and we were getting a bit more of a foothold in the game, creating those overloads, getting Tavares isolated on a few occasions. But then we scuffed a couple of shots. And then the third goal, which you called out, was offside, killed the game. It doesn't matter. It wasn't going to change the result because we were second best and some. We're probably third best, to be frank. But the point is, at 2-0, if we score a goal, it at least puts Arsenal in a question. Can they hold this? Will they buckle? Will we find our feet? We'll never know, because that third goal killed the game. We made a bunch of changes, didn't have the effect we were after. And I think, as I said earlier, we end up having more questions than answers. The one thing I will sort of pull out as well is it was nice to see our new signing Koulibaly come on, made some vital blocks and interceptions, showed his pace at times to stop Pepe getting in behind, made a crucial block from him again as well. He gave away that foul, a bit of a tactical one to block Nketiah running through on goal, I think it was. So overall, he was one of the positives in his 20-minute cameo, but it was a bit of a shame to see Chalobah come off as well because of his injury. But as I was saying to you, you talked about starting lineups, etc. Throughout this whole preseason, what we have seen from Chelsea is you haven't seen a standard starting 11 that most people would pick. You've got about 4 or 5 players from each half that you would say are starters, but not as a unit together. So I'm not sure if that's a deliberate thing to try to not give away too much.
Does Tino his best 11?
Well, that's the thing. I think part of it is also he's trying to give people a chance. He's trying to give people a chance to prove him wrong or show him what they can do. Like he said in his press conference, we'll give young players a run. Your Ethan Ampadu, your Levi Colwill last game, your Mishi Batshuayi, your Emerson's now. So I think he's trying to be fair, at least, to give people an opportunity. But as a result, he's really masking what his best 11 actually is, which is a bit of a concern for us because we're risking it right until the first day of the season.
Yeah. Look, well said, mate. And there's a couple of players, I think, on both our teams that we're not expecting to be there at the beginning. Robbie, our fellow co-host and resident Red Devil, asking, could Pepe stay at Arsenal for depth? He looked decent off the bench. If you were asking me, I would say keep him for depth because we're going to take a massive financial loss in any move that we make. But I just don't think him and Arteta see eye to eye. I don't think he rates Arteta, and I don't think that Arteta rates him. So we know that Mikel Arteta doesn't like keeping players who are seen as controversial or who he doesn't feel are fully in for his process. So I expect to see Pepe go, or if he stays, play a really minimal role. I know who this is now, Saucy. When we did speak on Ish, you mentioned you weren't too convinced about Eddie. Look, vocally, and I mean, people could clip it up. I've not hidden it. I'm not Eddie Nketiah's biggest fan.
That's not what you told me. You said he was the heir to the throne for Thierry Henry offline.
Don't put him in the same sentence. Not yet. Has anything in the preseason changed your mind? My mind has changed to the extent that I think he's a good squad player. I still don't think he's ready to start. I still don't think he's worthy of the number 14. I'm one of them people who loves the sentimentality of squad numbers. So, no, I think he's a good squad player, and I think he'll contribute with some rotation. We got Emad in the house from Man Cave United. Yeah, the boys asking the question we all want to know: what's if the glasses, mate? You look like a
devastated, mate. I'm shattered. What can I say?
Forgettable morning. Got a bit of salt in the chat, but you know what? These are United fans. This is the problem with their base, mate. Man of the match for you. RJ, for both teams, who stood out for you?
One man only. Think about our one. Yeah, for your guys, I'd probably say, I know it's one person. I'd probably say Odegaard. I don't know. I just thought he was strong in the middle. I scored a nice finish. To me, it's between him or Jesus because I thought he led the line well up front. Yep. But I'll go for your captain.
Yeah, look, I'm going to go with Odegaard as well. Jesus obviously didn't play as many minutes, so his output in terms of what he was contributing to the attack was excellent. But Odegaard sustained that beautiful free kick that almost went in as well. So he was my standout for Arsenal. I would probably say in terms of Chelsea, and you're probably going to laugh when you think of the scoreline. I thought Mendy was quite good, and I also thought Mason Mount. In terms of his energy and movement, he couldn't spark much in attack, but when you've got someone like Timo Werner in front of you, it is very hard to kickstart an attack. So I'm actually going to go Mendy just slightly because he performed very well.
Yeah, it's really difficult, man, because 4-0, do you really have a man of the match? Like, we copped a hiding. Mendy made a couple of good saves. He could have done better with a couple of the efforts, like the third goal. Could his positioning been better for the second goal? I don't know. Like, I know what you're saying about Mason. At least he got involved. Jorginho, I thought, interesting. I thought, you know what? I thought Jorginho, for the criticism he gets, he wasn't that bad. I thought he did his job fairly well. Like, the second goal he was responsible for because his static movement. But again, mate, you're hard-pressed to find a man of the match from our squad. We were collectively poor.
What? We both neglected someone who I actually think was a clear man of the match for Chelsea, and that's Reece James. I thought one of the key changes in how Chelsea played, in that first half, you were so pressed and so frazzled that you were trying to through the middle. And I thought Xhaka and Thomas Partey did a really good job with the others of shutting that down. You weren't getting through the middle. When you started the second half, you actually started the second half brighter than we did, I thought. And that was because you were playing wide. With that high press, if you can then trigger a counter-attack using the space out wide, it looks good. So for me, Reece James and Nuno Tavares on skates. And Tavares, for me, was probably our worst. When he came on, I noticed that Chelsea, down his side, were dominating. He's just, I don't know if he hasn't got the technical ability or the
Yeah.
defensive ability, but I actually don't see the guy as a defender. I'd be happy bringing him off the bench to play up top on the left, but he's just not. He's not a left back, and we need to drop that narrative because Reece James dominated him, put in some really good balls, but no one just got on the end of them, unfortunately for them. So he was probably my man of the match for Chelsea. I take the other ones back.
Fair
Were you
enough. Fair enough.
impressed with Reece James?
I think he got more involved because we had him playing higher up. But that's, again, he's only effective once the others around him can get on the end of his cross or they provide cover for him. I just felt, again, 4-0, it's really hard to give a standout. I actually thought Conor Gallagher, he copped a lot of stick in that first half, but he did a lot of good things, I still thought, defensively in terms of shutting down some dangerous opportunities. Like in the middle, they were getting worked hard. So I thought like we were quite busy. Defensively, we made a lot of mistakes. We're usually quite robust there. Thiago Silva, he was the one that could have, he made some good tackles, as you saw, and marshaled the ball out a few times. But there's the first goal, he played Jesus onside, should have stepped higher up. The second goal, we all know what happened there with Jorginho staying static. And the third goal, that's offside. But the fourth one, they left him totally unmarked. Azpilicueta was covering on the inside and left his blind side totally open. So, yeah, mate, too many negatives to highlight too many positives on a player point of view.
Right. RJ, we have covered the first half, the second half, the goals, the key moments. We've talked about how much importance we're putting on this game as well. What's next for Chelsea? If you had to pick one thing that you've learnt about your team from this match, what is it? What's the one key thing you've learned?
That we're still unsure about how we approach the next game, to be honest, both system-wise and personnel. I'm not sure, again, if that's a deliberate masking to try to not give too much away, but I genuinely think that was a bit of confusion from our end. So, yeah, key takeaway is that there's a lot more work to be done on a training pitch before the next Udinese game in a few days' time.
Yep.
But some of that's going to be shaped by transfer activity. Jules Koundé, is he going to Barcelona? Is he going to Arsenal? Rob, I know, asked a quick-fire question. Do Chelsea or Barca get him? Mate, it's a flip of a coin. Depends who you ask. We're getting different sources telling you different things. To be honest, I'm pretty over it. As I said, Koundé in, Koundé out, couldn't care less. I just want it to be done now. I hope he goes somewhere and we stop hearing this story. But for us, it's just about finding a settled starting 11 and then trying to work out the system after that. But at the moment, it's quite grey skies for us.
And RJ, as we move towards wrapping this stream up, and we're buzzing that so many of you have joined us on your Sunday lunch or your Monday morning or Saturday night, who knows what it is in all parts of the world. What did you learn about Arsenal this morning?
That they're a team that has a lot more comfort in the way they play. They seem to be a lot more confident in their organised pressing. They have a lot more positive energy in that camp at the moment. But I would, sprinkle a little bit of urge of caution. It's perspective. It's pre-season. You had a good win against a top team like ourselves, but you're versing a team at the moment that has a lot of uncertainty at the moment. If you did this against a Liverpool or a City, I'd be a lot more, okay, it's the real deal. I'm not saying they're not the real deal, but if there's ever a time to be versing us, it's probably now when we're in this experimentation phase. So look, positive signs for Arsenal, but let's not get ahead of ourselves because the real deal starts when the campaign kicks off.
Absolutely. Look, for me, something I learned about Arsenal this morning is that we play much better when we press. And I know some people might be listening to that and saying, thanks a lot, Captain Obvious, but it's not necessarily always obvious because a lot of the games when Arsenal don't perform is when we come out and we've just got this attitude where we feel we can muck around, pass it around slowly, not push too hard. But today, and in a lot of our best results in the last, 6 months, they've come on the back of an intense press, and that's what we need to do. So for me, Arsenal's best chance of success this season is going to come on the back of an intense, fast, aggressive press.
Is that consistent, but? Like, do you say that should be the way for all games? Like, would you be
Yes,
that brave to do that against the Cities and Liverpools of the world?
we did it against City last season. We did it against City late last season, and it was actually one
Yeah,
of our best performances. Even though we lost the match,
at
all
the end.
Arsenal
Yeah.
fans were coming out stoked with how we played. So yeah, I think we need to be brave. I do think we need to be incredibly brave and make this press the figure of our attack and the pinnacle of our identity as an attacking football club. Because we're not the kind of club that's going to base success on sitting deep and defending. What I learned about Chelsea, Chelsea play best when there's width. To me, it's all about width for you. You've got Chilwell, Reece James, who when you were playing really well last season, those two were the key creators, goal scorers. I think you need to start using your wide men, and I think Thomas Tuchel needs to make sure that that service is coming from wide. The problem will be who in the middle is going to finish what's being put into the box, and I think that's where you need to address it. You spoke about
I
Paul
think
James
it's the
there.
middle. I was going to say though, like the wide areas are where we get the most opportunity, but I think it's also for us so important that we work out who's in that engine room because if we're trying to be a team that builds up from the back and absorbs that pressure, it's so important that you have a pivot or a lone DM that's going to be able to connect the dots to open
Yep.
up the space for those wide men. Because there's no point having the Ben Chilwells and Reece James bombing up the pitch if in the middle someone gets pressed and doesn't know how to turn out of danger. So I think that whole engine in the middle is going to be so crucial for us. And that's why when you don't have players like Kante who can't be there because of his vaccination status, I'm not saying he's the lone DM solution, but the pairing of him and Jorginho or him and Kovacic, we never got to see that thus far. So you don't know where we're genuinely at because he is such an important player in the setup. So it will be interesting.
Absolutely. Look, for me, Skamaka. You sign a player like Skamaka, gives you that threat in the box because you just don't have it. I mean, could be Lukaku
Mm.
2.0, but it is what it is. There's a long way to go. This is only preseason, but we're grateful that so many of you have been able to join us at this different time for It's a Football Thing. So please leave a like. Please sub if you haven't already. RJ, I'm sure, is going to have the glasses off for our next stream on Tuesday, and we hope to see you there. Take care, everyone. Enjoy your Sunday and look after yourselves. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.